Hi, welcome today. We are in episode 4, talking about career paths, talking about becoming an entrepreneur, talking about becoming an intrapreneur. We'll talk about jobs a little bit. We'll talk about how to become a linchpin in whatever job or whatever job setting you're in. So let me set the stage for today a little bit. Number one, if this is the first episode that you're getting a chance to take a look at, just send an email to us. Or you can go to my website, CodyGibson.com, and you can let us know there, and we can get you the replay links of episodes 1 through 1, 2, and 3 before today's episode number 4. Next week, we'll do episode 5. It'll be a week from today, which is Thursday the 20. Is that the 22nd? Be Thursday the 22nd, same time, 5 o'clock Pacific time. And episode 5 is completely fixated on environment. How do you feed your mind? How do you feed your body? We'll talk about how to control the environment around you the best you can. We'll talk about what you put into your brain. We'll talk about what you put into your mouth. We'll talk about like how I view that. We'll talk about food and water. We'll talk about exercise. We'll talk about what you read, what you watch, what you look at. We'll go back and we'll tie some of the loose ends up on some of the affirmations we talked about in episode 1 and episode 2, where we focused on gratitude and affirmations. So we'll tie some of the loose ends up there. So, all right. So when we talk about entrepreneur, intrapreneur, all that means is this: like, you hear lots of terms, like especially if you're on Instagram, you'll see and hear lots of memes and terms about becoming an entrepreneur. You'll hear things that they're kind of the truth, but they're not the whole truth. You'll see something and people will say stuff like it's the only truth on earth. They'll say things like 97% of the people will work for the 3% who didn't give up. There's some truth to that, I guess, but that's not the whole truth. Some of the things that you'll see on Instagram or social media or t-shirts is you'll see stuff about, if you're willing to work a 40-hour work week, like in other words, if you're willing to have like a normal job, you're never going to get rich. That's not really true at all. There's plenty of normal jobs that you work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, that you can become quite wealthy in. And there's plenty of jobs that you could work a normal job, never take a bank loan, never open a business, never start a company, never take a giant risk. There's plenty of jobs and plenty of career paths that offer you plenty of money that you can work for dollars, earn a lot of dollars, and then take those dollars and invest them or do something with them on the side. Owning a business is not the only pathway to building wealth. Owning a business is not the only pathway to having freedom. That's not true. Like, you don't have to do it to achieve those things. They're truthy at best. There's nothing wrong with becoming an entrepreneur, starting your own thing, building your own thing. It's what I ultimately went out and did to a degree. But there's also nothing wrong with being an intrapreneur. And an intrapreneur is simply a play on terms, right? An intrapreneur is somebody who does their own thing inside of somebody else's. Let me give you an example. The biggest businesses I own are real estate businesses, whether it's a real estate brokerage. I own one in Oregon and I own one in Arizona. I'm buying a third one right now in another state, in California. And then I have a real estate sales team. But all of those businesses operate within another business almost over that, like an umbrella. We call it a franchise. It would be like McDonald's, right? Every McDonald's that you see, except for a couple, are individually owned. So somebody like me or somebody like you or your parents own that one McDonald's. But they pay a portion of every burger that they sell. They pay a portion of that back to the headquarters of McDonald's as a franchise fee. And so that would be a really great example of an intrapreneur. And so somebody who owns a McDonald's franchise or 20 McDonald's franchises, they're an entrepreneur in that they own their own business. They have their own thing, but they didn't come up with their own burger. They didn't come up with their own French fries. They didn't come up with their own milkshake recipe. They didn't come up with their own menu or even their own pricing. They're told by headquarters, they're told by the franchise, you're going to sell these things this way, and it works really well. And that's a great example of an intrapreneur. There's people who work in my business who would be intrapreneurs. They do an amazing business. They make a great income, but they work inside of Cody's company. And so if you just believe everything you see on social media, you would think, well, shoot, they can't make a great income and they can't have a big life working in Cody's world or Cody's business. They have to go do their own. That's not true. They could build a great big life and a great big income. There's people in my own company over the years who have made more money that year than I made. I'm the owner, and I'm usually not the highest earner in the business. And it's okay. Like I'm just telling you that what you see and what you hear is not the only truth. So put everything through like a filter. Have a grain of salt when you listen to those things. It's not the only truth. Here's the next truth is this. I'm sure you can find different reports. Most studies will say today, I was reading one the other day that said the average person today in their lifetime, like their working lifetime, which would be like 18, and many of us get jobs long before that. My first paid job, I was 11. But the typical lifetime employee will work somewhere between 7 and 9 different careers or major job changes. That's a lot. Like if you just look at like maybe 20 to 70 or 20 to 60, 65, 20 to 65 would be 45 years. And if they have 7 to 9 major changes during those 45 years, that's every 4 or 5 years, a massive change, massive job change, massive career change, total right turn, total left turn. I totally did this kind of work and now I do this kind of work. And I don't even know what it looks like in the next 10 or 15 years. Especially in this last year, so many people are working more from home. So many people are working more remote. You're going to grow up in a time frame that I was on the front end of. I'm 40, but you're 15 or 20 or 22 or 13. You're going to grow up in an era, a time frame where being a nomad work lifestyle is normal. Nomad meaning that you could work from anywhere. Nomad meaning that everything you do from a phone or a laptop. And it doesn't matter if you ever walk into an office, or maybe you go into an office once in a while and the other 25 days or 20 days out of that month, you could work literally from anywhere. You could work from your lap. And you could be in Dubai, or you could be in LA, or you could be in Chicago or New York or Alaska or Portland or anywhere you want to be. That didn't happen in the time frame of your parents. It didn't happen in the time frame of my parents. There were a handful who did that, but it was incredibly rare, not enough to talk about. But in the next generation, incredibly common, incredibly common. And so what I want you to think about is this. The job that you take or the job that you do, that's not the job that you're going to work the rest of your life. Like you go and take a job at 16, you're not going to work there forever. You go and take a job at 20, you're probably not going to work there forever. And I want you to think this. You have so much time, you almost can't make a mistake. The more experience you could put together, the more different types of jobs you could work, the more different types of businesses you can be in, the more rounded you're going to become, the more overall experience you'll be able to offer someone. It's almost like somebody who has played, we'll take football. Imagine playing football and you're able to play almost any position. You could play this side, you can play offense, you can play defense, you could throw the ball pretty well, you can catch it pretty well, you can kick okay. That person is always going to have a role somewhere on a football team, always, because they're good enough. They might not be the highest paid in their role or their specialty. That's okay. Here's what I want you to know. I want you to always have something to fall back on. Not that you need to fall back. And there's people that will tell you don't have a plan B. There's motivational speakers that will tell you that if you have a plan B, a fallback, then you weren't committed to plan A. I don't need to say that I think they're wrong. It's just not right for me. What's right for me is that I always know that I have something I can go do to earn an income, meaning I could take big risk. So here's my life story, right? As it relates to having a fallback. When I was 18, 19, 20, basically from like 18 to 24, I I worked all the time as a real estate agent. Like I worked a lot, but I also played a lot. And on top of that, I was really interested in remodeling houses. And I was really interested in flipping homes. And so I'd buy a home, I'd do a bunch of work to it, I'd fix it up, I'd change the entire interior, and then I would sell it for a profit. And I did the majority of the work. And so I'd go to work all day long in my job, which was being a real estate agent. And then in the evening, as soon as I was done, I'd go and I'd eat and I'd change clothes and I'd drive over to whatever remodel I was doing. And I would work on that usually until 11 o'clock or 12 o'clock at night. And then I would go home and go to sleep, and I get up the next day. Sometimes I would fall asleep at the remodel I was working at. I would always have like a cot and a sleeping bag, and sometimes I would just sleep there. But I was at the point in my life where it was just time to work. It was just time to put a lot of effort in. Long story short, I got really good at remodeling homes. I got really good at building decks and building fences and doing sheetrock and redoing tile and doing plumbing and all the things, right? Flooring, trim, like whatever. I've always known in the back of my mind that any one of my businesses could totally fail. Any one of my businesses could burn to the ground. Any one of the risks I've taken, which there's been times that I've looked down and I've had all my money, like all my money, riding on a bet in my business, and it needed to work or the business was going to be in massive trouble. There's been times I've looked down and I didn't know how to make payroll, meaning I was worried about payroll coming up in 2 weeks, but I was the owner, I had to pay it. I've always known that I could take those risks. And the worst thing that would happen, guys, the worst thing is that my business would fail, but I'd never be living under a bridge. I'd never be homeless again. I would never be out of money. I would never be any of those things. I could always fall back, if you will, and go to work building decks, go to work building fences, go to work remodeling houses, go to work for a contractor, and I could just do labor work. I always had something I could go and do. And so when I say have a fallback, I don't want to do it. And in my mind, it's not there to protect me from taking risk. It's actually there to allow me to take the biggest possible risk because I know I'm going to be okay. I'm always going to be able to earn an income. I had a family pretty early. By the time I was 25, I was married and had a child. And so by the time I was 25, like I had a family to feed. I had a child to feed. And I always knew, worst case scenario, we might not have lavish vacations. We might not have tons of money, but you know what? We're always going to eat and we're always going to be okay. And you know what? At the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a perfect family. And so I never had a problem with that. So when I say have a fallback, that's what I mean. It never kept me from taking risk. It actually allowed me to take risk. And there's nothing wrong with you having a fallback. Now, I don't want to work with my hands my whole life. I don't want to build fences my whole life. I don't want to build decks. I don't want to do those things. And I can't earn enough money to help enough people that I want to help with that kind of money. But I can always earn enough money that we're going to eat, we're going to have a home, we're going to take vacation, my kids can go to a nice school, we're going to have food, cars, all the stuff, right? Worst case scenario, we're good. Our needs are met. When you think about what you're going to go and do, it's interesting because people will say things like, when you find what you're passionate about and you love to do, you'll never work a day in your life. And what they mean is, you're just going to love what you do all the time. That, to me, guys, is the biggest lie you're ever going to hear as it relates to a job or a business or a career field. Trust me, I'm the owner of my companies, and there's stuff that I do that I don't want to do. I'm the owner, and there's stuff I have to do because nobody else can do it, or nobody else will do it, or I can't afford to pay somebody else to do some of the things. You are always going to, if you're taking notes, I want you to write this down. You will always have tasks. You will always have parts of your job, parts of your career that you don't love. You will always have things that you have to do because they need to get done. You will always have things that you don't love doing. I need you to make peace with that. There's nothing wrong with that. And everybody I know is that way. A musician, a singer, or an artist, like they're going to play in a concert somewhere that they don't want to be. They're going to go and play a concert that's a size that they don't want to be at, or a city they don't want to visit, or they're going to be sick one night and they're going to be like, the last thing I want to do is get up on stage and sing my heart out. But they got to do it. They've pre-booked it. They've sold the tickets. They got to show up. They don't get a day off. And so the idea that as long as you love what you do, it's never going to feel like work, meaning that work somehow is negative, bad, or wrong, that's just not true. So I don't want you to believe it. I want you, when you hear it, to say, okay, but just keep moving. Like, there's going to be some things that you don't want to do. And I want you to embrace that sometimes it's going to be difficult. I want you to embrace that it's going to be things that you feel like are beneath you. Like, I remember when I was running a Kmart store, at the time when I first became a store manager for Kmart Corporation, I was 16. And I had to drop out of high school to make it happen because I had to work all the time, right? Long story short, for a different day. But at the time, I remember being a store manager, and if the janitor didn't show up, I had to go clean the bathrooms. If the janitor didn't show up and there was a mess in the bathroom, just use your imagination, somebody had to clean it up. I was the first one to go clean it up. Our Kmart store, had a Little Caesars, a pizza restaurant. And if my manager for Little Caesars didn't show up, guess who had to make pizzas? I can't tell you how many nights I had to make pizzas because nobody was there. And if the customer wanted to order a pizza, I needed to go make pizzas. Now, I was the store manager. It wasn't my job, but my job was to do whatever it takes. The faster that you look at job and the faster you look at work and you realize that you're just the guy, you're just the gal, you are just the person who's always willing to do whatever it takes. If it needs to get done, I'm your guy. If it needs to get done, I'm it. If it needs to get done, I'm the first one in line. By the way, the messier it is, the grosser it is, the less somebody else likes to do it, the faster you ought to jump in. You just become that person. By the way, after cleaning up messes on the bathroom floor at Kmart, again, use your imagination, I've never found something messier in my business I've had to do. I've never found something more degrading, if you will. And I use that term. It really wasn't degrading to me. Like, it needed to get done. Somebody had to do it. And as the boss, I've always thought, I'm not going to ask people to do things I'm unwilling to do. But the fastest way to become the boss is to do the things that nobody else wants to do, but never have to be asked to do them. Jump in and take care of it. You see a problem, deal with the problem. You see an issue, deal with the issue. Which brings me to, I'm going to come back and talk about entrepreneur and intrapreneur some more, but I want to give you my top 10 in case you've got to jet out of here or you don't catch the entire webinar. Here's my top 10. Here's what I think. Like, I've been working since I was 11. I'll turn 41 in a couple of months. So that's 30 years. So in my opinion, in 30 years, here's the top 10 things that's always going to move you to the top of the food chain. That's always going to move you to the front of the line. That's always going to make you indispensable, irreplaceable, or a really great book. If you're willing to read it, get your parents to buy it for you. Your parents will buy you any book you want, especially if it's a self-help, business, growth, or whatever you want to call it. Linchpin by Seth Godin. Linchpin. Linchpin, the entire idea behind Linchpin is like a pin that holds two things together, like a rivet or a screw that holds two things together. And when you become a linchpin in your business, you want to be the one person at your job that the boss is like, oh my gosh, if everybody quit, as long as Cody doesn't quit. If everybody was gone, as long as Cody can show up. You want to be the one person that's like, man, as long as this person keeps showing up, you're always going to make all the money you want to make. And you're always going to get promoted. Like, you're going to get promoted faster than anybody you know. So here's my 10. And so I'll go through them. So my top 10, number 1, be on time all the time. Be on time all the time. An easy rule of thumb is on time is 15 minutes early. So if your job shift starts at 7, you get there at 6:45. You don't get there at 7. If you walk in at 7, you're already late. You're supposed to be working at 7, not walking in and taking off your jacket and clocking in and getting ready or whatever. 15 minutes early. I promise you, my friends, if you will take just number 1, if you'll take just number 1 and number 8, I want to give this to you. 7, 6, 5, 4. Number 7. If you take number 1 and number 7, no, excuse me, number 1 and number 11. You take number 1 and number 11. If you just take those 2, I promise you, you can go as far as you ever want to go. Now, 2 through 10 are going to be really important, but 1 and 11 are vital. Number one is always on time, which means 15 minutes early. You will usually be the only person on your shift, the only person who works for your boss. You'll be the one person who's always there early. Trust me on this. Just make it a point. If you got to set your watch fast, if you've got to trick yourself, if you've got to, whatever it takes, be 15 minutes early. And the more you do that in your life, the further you're going to go. When I never had a challenge with this at work. I was always good at this with work. I was always okay with being early. But I did have a challenge with it personally. And all through my 20s, I would be late for almost everything. Oh my gosh, almost everything. Almost every meeting. I'd be teaching a class somewhere and I'd walk in 15 minutes late. Like, it was ridiculous. And when I was 31, 32, somewhere in there, about 10 years ago, I just said, I am tired of having to apologize. I am tired of having to say, I'm sorry, I'm late. I am tired of always being running late. I am tired of driving to an appointment and being like stressed out because I'm late. I'm just tired of it. And I'm just going to stop. I'm just going to stop doing it. And I did. I just stopped doing it. The habit hung on for a little bit, but I quit doing it. And today I don't struggle with it like I used to. But as far as my point goes of being on time, if your shift starts at 8, you show up at 7:45. Trust me on this. You will be shocked how much value this gives you. You'll be shocked how much impressed your boss will be with you, your manager. Trust me, this is a big deal. Number 2, no personal stuff at work. If you're at work, be at work. If you're taking notes, I want you to write this down. Be appropriate in the moment. Be appropriate. If you're at work, don't be on your phone. If you're at work, don't be texting and emailing and looking at social media. Don't be doing personal stuff. Even if they tell you it's okay, don't do it. Don't do it. Like, there's jobs that you'll have, like maybe you'll work at a coffee shop and somebody will be like, hey, as long as you're here from 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock, do whatever you want when the customers aren't here. I would tell you, if you want to own the coffee shop one day, you don't do that. You're not sitting there on your phone cruising Instagram waiting for a customer to pull up. You're cleaning something. You're making sure the coffee maker is clean. You're making sure that the bottles are put away right. You're making sure that everything is prepped correctly for the next day. You fill the time. If you're at work, you work 100%. If you want to own the coffee shop one day, or own the franchise one day, or own 100 of them, then you act like the boss. The owner would never sit there on their phone. The owner would be like, cool, I got a couple of minutes until the next person shows up, which means I can clean everything. I can prep everything. One of the biggest secrets I can tell you is that if you act like the owner when you're the employee, you'll someday be the owner. Just act like it. If nothing else, you're going to get the experience of what an owner has, which is they're always working. They never stop. So even if I'm telling you, even if they tell you, you know what, this is a great job because you can do whatever as long as you're not in front of somebody. I would tell you, if you want to own it one day, if you want to make a mountain of money someday, if you want to, and by the way, being successful isn't just about money. If money made people successful, then drug dealers would be successful. They've got money. It's not just the money. It's what you do with it. It's the impact that you have on people's lives. It's the amount of goodness that you can do for others. And it's okay for you to enjoy it too. So when I say a mountain of money, I'm assuming you're going to do something amazing with it. I'm assuming you're going to pay off your parents' house. I'm assuming that you're going to buy something for someone who can't afford it for themselves. I'm assuming that you're going to do something for a charity or a cause or a place like that others couldn't do. So when I say money, it's not just so you have it. It's so you can do something with it. One of my favorite sayings about money is that money is good for the good it can do. So how many cool things can you do with money? When you get good at doing cool things with money, then you can't get enough. Because in your mind, you just go, man, how do I make more money so I can do more good things? How do I make more money so I can help more people? And how do I make more money so I can have more stuff or my family? There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. You're not a bad person to want things. You're not a bad person if you want to have a beautiful boat or a beautiful yacht or a beautiful cabin in the woods or 3 cars in the garage. You're not a bad person for those things. Money doesn't make you bad. I grew up in a family where my parents would tell me that if you had money, then you must have taken advantage of someone to have it. That money was somehow the root of all evil. Money is not the root of all evil. Money doesn't make people bad. Money could expose people. If you want to hurt people, or if you want to take advantage of people, or if you're not a very good person and someone gives you a whole bunch of money, you're just not a very good person who happens to have a lot of money, and you'll probably be more of a not very good person. But if you're a great person and you want to help people and someone gives you a mountain of money, you're just going to help more people. You're going to do more amazing things. So money doesn't change people. Money exposes people. If you're good, money will make you better. You'll do more good things. If you don't care about people, well, then you'll just be someone who doesn't care about people and you'll have money. Number 3, hustle. What I mean by that is I want you to run. I've been a basketball coach for kids, I think maybe total 8 seasons or 9 seasons. I really love doing it. And I love coaching like 3rd and 4th grade, 4th and 5th grade. Like I like that. I like that age group. And as a coach, I'll always teach them and I'll think, okay, what could I coach? 4th grade is like a 10-year-old, right? What could I coach a 10-year-old? Because we're not going in the NBA right now, but what could I teach a 10-year-old that they're going to need when they're 15 or 20 or 30, or if they ever went to the NBA? And so one of the things I'll teach them is what I'm giving you right now. I always want you to run. I want you to be in a hurry. And so I'll tell them, listen, if we're going to go into a huddle or a timeout and you're coming off the bench, you never walk on the court. Like the kids that have played basketball for me know they never walk on the court. If they're out on the court and the referee calls a timeout or something happens, and they got to come back to our sideline, you run. You never walk, you run, you hustle. You're always moving. You're always hustling because you don't want to waste any time. Why would you lollygag around and walk on the court for 15 extra seconds when you could have 15 extra seconds with the team or with the coach planning how to win the game? Use your time wisely. So let me give you an example. In Oregon, it's illegal to pump your own gas, which is ridiculous, but you can't pump your own gas, meaning that when I go to the gas station in Oregon, I got to sit in my car and someone comes out and pumps my gas. It creates jobs. And the other day I was at this gas station and there was like 10 cars lined up when I got there. And I'll call it a kid. He was probably 19. The kid running the gas pumps, man, he looked over and saw my car and he bolted. Like he ran to my car. He got to the car. He's like, whew. He goes, "Sir, what can I get you?" Like he had a great attitude. He was smiling. He addressed me as sir. We're at a gas station. He doesn't have to call me anything. He could just wander up and say, "What do you want?" But he's like, "Sir, what can I get you?" Like he had so much, like he was excited to be there. And he got the gas going and he ran to the next car. Then he ran to the next one. And I sat there while he ran all around that whole gas station, and he was hustling. He never walked, always running. Then by the time I was done, there was only 3 cars left. Now, you could make the argument when there's 8 or 10 cars, he had to run. So I started watching, right? Like I hung out for a second after I was finished, and there was 3 cars. You know what? He kept running. Didn't have to at that point because it wasn't overly busy, but he kept running. He finally walked back to my car and I gave him a tip and I looked at him and I said, "Listen, if you'll act like this and never stop, you're going to own this gas station someday, and probably the one down the street." And he looked at me and he's like, "I know." And I'm like, "Dude, whoever taught this kid this, give him a gold star, because that was a lesson this kid's never going to forget. I didn't teach it. I may have said it, or I may have reaffirmed it, but hustle, run." And what you'll find is this: your boss, your manager, everybody around you is going to see you always hustling. Like you're just moving, like you're never taking your time. You're always moving. You're always in a hurry. You're always running. I don't always mean physically running. You get what I mean. Like you're just busy, like you're always getting things done. And the entire team is going to level up around you. Let's say you work at Starbucks and you're just hustling, even if you don't need to. Now, if it's super busy, you have to hustle. And if you don't, you're going to get fired. But when it's not busy, if you're still willing to hustle, if you're still willing to move fast, you're going to increase everybody around you. The easiest way to be indispensable on a team at work is to be the person who sets the bar, the person who sets the speed that everyone else like, "Oh my gosh, I got to keep up with Cody. Look at Cody. Look how fast he moves through this." Like I went back there to that Little Caesars. I remember it as clear as yesterday. We had a whole new crew of people, and we had like a line of people, and they couldn't make the pizzas fast enough. We had a sale on pizzas that weekend. And I walked back there and I was like, all right. I went and I grabbed, like, I changed out of my suit and tie. I grabbed some clothes off of, we worked at Kmart. So I grabbed some clothes off of one of the racks, and I got dressed like in jeans and a t-shirt. And I went back and I was like, we're going to make all these pizzas. And we started just slamming through pizzas, and it didn't take very long before everybody was taken care of. And all of a sudden that became the tempo. That became how it worked. Same thing. Again, another Kmart story. When I was first a manager there, we had the trucks would come in, and the person who unloaded the trucks, all the boxes, it was a mess back there. And she told us, she was the receiving manager, stockroom manager, whatever you want to call her. She said it takes 3 days to unload one of these trucks, like those giant semi trucks, like they're 40 feet long, like it's packed with boxes. And they were always lined up outside of our store. There'd be like 5 of them, and we couldn't get our inventory, and our shelves wouldn't have the right inventory on them because it was sitting in a truck out behind the store. And it would take 3 days to unload the boxes. And so Randy, the guy that I worked with, we watched, and Randy taught me this lesson. We watched for a couple of days how fast they were unloading the trucks. And Randy went to the shipping manager, the receiving manager, the stockroom manager, and said, I think that Cody and I can unload a whole 40-foot truck in 4 hours. They were taking 3 people 3 days. Randy was saying 2 people could do it in a half a day. And I remember looking at him thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know if we can do this. And he's like, dude, we can do this. So the next morning we showed up, and man, we hustled. We got it done in 4 hours. Did you know over the course of about 2 weeks, we did that every single day? And by the end of those 2 weeks, you know what was happening. Everybody in the stock room was running as fast as we were. They were having more fun. They enjoyed their job. Like they were hustling, they were high-fiving, they were running. They liked what they were doing. Like the busier you are, the faster your 8 hours goes when you're at work, right? And before you know it, we never had trucks lined up behind the store anymore. Our shelves were always full of the stock, and our sales went up at the store, which is what we were in charge of. Our sales went up because we were never out of anything. Because it wasn't like we were out, we just couldn't sell it because it was stuck in a stupid truck. And all of a sudden, people were working faster. They had more fun with it. All right, so hustle, run. Number 1, 2, 3, number 4, never complain. Never complain. You're the person at work that never complains. Now, I'm not talking about if something illegal is done. I'm not talking about if you're, what's the right way to say this? If someone does something they shouldn't to you, if someone's inappropriate to you or makes an inappropriate comment or joke, or somebody, God forbid, somebody is physically inappropriate with you. If those things happen, you go tell your parents. If those things happen, you go tell an adult, you go tell somebody, even if you're 20, you go find someone who's older than you and you say, what do I do with this? Help me with this. They will have the perfect advice. They will know what to do. So I'm not talking about that. So remove those things. I'm talking about you got to stay late one day, or someone doesn't show up, or someone doesn't do their job. And so you got to work a little harder. You are never the person that complains. This kind of goes back to the affirmations conversation. You don't let the complaint come out of your mouth. You just don't do it. You don't do it. You suck it up. Like you suck it up and you do the job. You're the person who always does more than you're supposed to. You're the person who always does more than you need to. And I want you to write this down. If I'm the person who always does more than I have to, I will always have more than I need. If I'm the person who always does more than I have to, I'll always have more than I need. Those two things go hand in hand. You're the person that just jumps in. You're the person that goes, hey, it's awesome. Like you don't complain because it's the day after Christmas and it's busy at the store. You don't complain because it's Sunday. You don't complain. If you don't like it that much, quit and go find a different job. That's fine, but you never complain. You don't let a complaint come out of your mouth. No complaining. Again, if it's wrong or illegal or immoral, go get help, right? Talk to human resources, talk to your boss, talk to your parents, whatever's appropriate. You don't let those things slide. You say something. But like the typical stuff, like the normal stuff, you just don't complain. No complaining. You get the job done. Next, give ideas. Give ideas. What I mean by that is this: if there's something that makes your job smoother or easier, you be the person that's always going to your boss saying, what if we did this? Could we offer this? Could we offer that? Could we do this? Like, I think if we do this and this, we'll sell more of it. Like if we give, like, I'll go back to the coffee shop. If we can give, like when somebody orders a cup of coffee, if I can offer them a cookie for 50 cents off, could we sell more cookies and still make a profit? You know what I mean? Like you offer ideas. You're the person who's always offering value. You're the person who's always come up with something, even if it's a bad idea. Your boss will go, nah, that doesn't work. And you go, no problem. And you come up with another idea. You're going to learn a couple things from this. Number one, ideas create opportunity. And you get in the habit of making ideas. And you get in the habit of making ideas on somebody else's dime. They're paying you. They're literally paying you to come up with ideas. But you're training yourself on how to always think opportunity. You're training yourself to think, what could I do with this? What could I do with that? Could I package these things together and sell more of it? The next thing that'll happen is that your boss or your manager will see that you're indispensable. You're not disposable. They're like, man, this is my idea guy. These are great ideas. You always come up with ideas. You make things better around you. Next, so this is number 1, 2. I didn't number them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Number 6, you cover for peers. This one's critical. This one's critical. What I mean by that is this. Let's say that you're working at a restaurant and somebody who works around you isn't doing their job. You go clean it up for them. You do your job and part of theirs. You do both. You do both. And a couple things are going to happen. Number one, eventually the people that matter are going to realize you're doing more than just your job, and they're going to reward you. Like your boss, your manager, they're going to see it. And if they don't, somebody will someday. Right? Like maybe you work at a job that your manager or your boss doesn't see anything, but you get the habit of doing it. And the next job you're at, or the next company you work at, or the next business you start, you're the guy or gal who's always covering for people. Like you do your job and theirs if you need to. The job gets done. The mission gets accomplished. You're the one that jumps in and does it, even if you got to hustle. The second reason though, why this is so important is that if you ever want to build your own business, or if you ever want to be the boss, meaning that you're an entrepreneur inside of somebody else's business, you're going to end up doing all the jobs anyway. You're going to end up being the person who does your job and then picks up the slack for somebody else. Everybody else and most people who work as an employee forever and don't ever make a lot of money, they're the ones who typically are like, yeah, so-and-so's not doing their job. And they're darn sure not going to jump in and do their job for them. You be the person that does your job and somebody else's. Just get in the habit of it and don't worry about it. Trust me, you're going to get rewarded for it someday. It's going to make a mountain of difference. The third reason is this though. Let's say that you work at a pizza place and you're the person who's like, if you're getting all of your job done and the person over here is falling behind, so you're helping them too. You're taking the call for them. You're helping them. Like you're always just helping them. You're never letting them fail. You're just always one who's helping. When the owner realizes how important you are and the owner makes you the manager or the owner makes you the boss, one of the hardest things that you're going to find is when you are peers, equals with somebody, but then you elevate and you become the boss of them. I remember there were 2 summers that I cleaned buses. I would have been 13 and 14, and it was my third job. Like, in other words, I was working 2 other jobs, but my third job when I was 13 and 14 was I was cleaning buses, and it was Greyhound buses. I lived in Juneau, Alaska, and they did like the tours, like the people would come in, the tourists, and they'd go all over town and they would put them on buses, but someone had to clean the buses. And so we cleaned the outside and cleaned the inside. Some of those buses were gross, by the way. Anyway, it was a team of like 10 of us. And I was always the guy who worked the fastest. Well, they made me the boss one week. They made me the boss. And I'll tell you, it was really hard because all of a sudden, all the people that I worked with now looked at me as their boss or their supervisor. And they made all kinds of comments about it. But you know what? They also knew that I was always the first person to help them. So I never let them lose. I was always there to help them. Trust me on this. This is a big deal. When you become the boss of your peers, you want to be remembered as the person who was always helping, not the person who was always letting them fail. You get in the habit of not rescuing. You get in the habit of helping people move forward. The right people will see what you're doing. All right. Number 7, always leave it better than you found it. If you work somewhere for a day or a week or a year, it doesn't matter. You leave it better than you found it. If your job is to work at a station, when you come in, you look at however the station looks, you leave it better when you leave. If you're working at a coffee shop, when your shift is over, you leave it better than you found it. You leave it cleaner than you found it. You always improve it. And you get in the habit of always leaving things better. It's no different in life. Like one of the greatest lessons you can learn in life is that if you borrow something from someone, you bring it back better than you found it. If you borrow your parents' car, you bring it back with more gas than when you took it. You bring it back cleaner. You stop at the gas station and clean out any trash. If your dad left a coffee cup in the car and you borrow the car, you take the coffee cup inside and you clean it. If you borrow a friend's tool, you bring it back on time and you bring it back cleaner than you found it. This is a lifelong lesson that's always going to leave you in a position to win. These are those little habits that over time win big. Little things. You always leave it better than you found it. You're the person that has a personal desire. Like your standard is everything you touch is better because you touched it. Your standard is everybody you talk to is a little better than before you talked with them. And so if you work in customer service somewhere and you get to work with people, which is my favorite, if you get to work with people, your job is for them to have a better day after they work with you, or after you give them their coffee, or after you bring them their meal, or whatever it is that you're doing. If you get to work with people, your job is they leave you better than you found them. Can't duplicate that. You can't buy that, but you will be rewarded for that. Trust me. All right. Number 8, do one extra. This goes with everything else in my life. And I wish I did it 100% of the time. I don't think anybody does it 100% of the time. But if you've got to do, like, if you got to do 10 push-ups, if your coach says do 10 push-ups, you do 11. If your coach says run 5 miles, you run 5 miles and then an extra half mile or an extra 100 yards, something. You always go a little bit more. When your teacher says this is extra credit, you don't have to do it, do the extra credit. Get in the habit of doing things you don't have to do. Get in the habit of going 1 extra inch. Get in the habit of going a little bit further. This is going to pay off for you your entire life. And so if your boss says, listen, we'll go back to Kmart for a second. If your boss says, I need you to face, meaning like all the boxes, if any of you work in retail, you know what I mean by facing. You take all the boxes or all the cans and you face them to where they all look straight, right? If you're told you face this aisle, you face the entire aisle and then you face part of the next one. Like you just do a little bit more than you were told to. I promise you, you are going to stand out above the crowd of everybody else. If you're told clean this mess, you clean the mess and then a little bit extra. You clean the mess and then you clean the bucket that you cleaned the mess with. Like you just do extra and you're going to be seen as the person who always goes an extra mile. And one of the biggest lessons you can learn in life is there is never a traffic jam on the extra mile freeway. It's never busy. You just become the person who always does a little extra. You're the person who always goes a little further, but it's not for other people. It's for yourself. And that's going to bleed over from job or work or business or entrepreneurism or any of those things. It's going to bleed over into your personal life. And you're going to realize that I always go a little extra. I always do more than I have to. And that's where the juice is found. Like that's where the best things are found. The amount of money that somebody makes or the amount of people somebody can help by going a little bit extra. If you go 10% extra, you might make 200% more. If you help 10% extra people, you might someday help 200% more. It's not an equal rotation. It's not an equal payoff. It's going to be in multiples. All right. Next, this is number 9, dress for success. This is one of the oldest sayings when it comes to impressing people. And your job is to impress people. Like it just is. Your job is to impress your boss. Your job is to impress your peers at work. Your job is to impress your customers. And I don't mean impress them like them thinking you're so cool or you always have the right answer. I mean impressing them that you're always a good person, impressing them that you're always working hard, impressing them that you're always early, impressing them that you do your job better than anybody else does the job. You're the best at it. If you're told to dress at this level, I just want you to dress at this level. Trust me on this one. You can't go wrong with this. You cannot go wrong with this. Just because you're allowed to do this doesn't mean you should. You just go one level up. Just one. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to wear a suit and tie and a tuxedo to work, for crying out loud. But if you're told to do this, like if you're told, listen, I want you to wear these khaki pants and this blue shirt, you know what you might do is you might make sure they're always ironed really nice. It could be that simple. It could be as simple as that. It could be as simple as making sure, like for the polo shirts, if you're told to wear like a polo shirt to work, that your collar's not always like all wonky and crazy and weird, which is what polo shirts do if you don't iron them and take care of them. There's a personal amount of self-respect that comes from that. And trust me, everybody will notice. Everybody will. So whatever the minimum is, you find out what the minimum is, but the minimum is never yours. The minimum is where you begin. So if this is the minimum, you're here always. If this is the minimum, you're here always. You don't let yourself get away with the minimum. And if you won't let yourself get away with the minimum, you will eventually earn the maximum. Let me say it again. If you won't ever let yourself get away with the minimum, you'll eventually earn the maximum. This is a big deal. One level up, just one level. You don't have to go 10 levels up. Like if you're told to wear jeans and a certain shirt, you don't show up in a suit and tie. Like that might be weird. Got it? You just go one level up. You know what it is. You know what I'm talking about. You never settle for the minimum, and you become the person who never settles for the minimum, and you'll never live on the minimum. All right, next. This one's big. Polite and clear. Especially if you're 14, 16, 20. One of the things that set me apart was that I had a speech impediment when I was in kindergarten and first grade. My mom pulled me out of school in the first grade and homeschooled me for the second half of first grade, all of second grade, and all of third grade. By homeschool, I mean we didn't go to school. So when I went back to public school in fourth grade, I was ridiculously behind. I couldn't read very well. I couldn't write very well. I had no idea what the hell anybody was talking about. And I had to fake it. Like fourth grade was one of the worst times of my life because I realized I felt stupid compared to everybody else. I wasn't, but I felt stupid. Anyway, so kindergarten and first grade, I had a speech impediment, and I would talk so fast and I would mumble all my words together. You couldn't even understand what I was saying. I didn't enunciate very well. Well, today I'm a public speaker. And part of it is because in first grade, a lady would come and get me from I went to Big Springs Elementary in Northern California. She'd come and get me from my schoolroom. I don't remember anything else, but she'd come and get me. And it was every Tuesday or every Wednesday or something like that. It was like 2 days a week, something like that. But I hated it. She'd come and get me. We'd go to a room and they did shock therapy for speech. So if I didn't say something right, I got a shock on my finger and it wasn't very pleasant. And they don't let you do shock therapy in public schools anymore. But it did work. Like it did work. It taught me to slow down my talk. It taught me to slow down my speech. And it taught me to enunciate when I talk. And sometimes people will think that I'm like from the Midwest. They'll be like, oh, you have like a Midwestern accent or like a drawl maybe to your voice. And I don't. I mean, I do, but it's because I've had to slow down my talking. The words in my head, in my brain, are moving so fast all the time, my lips and my mouth can't say them. I'll say like 3 words at once. And if I get really upset, like to this day, if I get really upset, it's never business, but personal. If I get really upset personally, I start stuttering real bad. And I know when I'm really, really worked up inside because I'll stutter like that. And then I get really embarrassed, right? Because I remember how embarrassing that was. So my point is to be polite and clear. Polite means you look somebody right in the eyes. If you're talking to them, you look them right in the eyes. If you're addressing someone, you face them. You allow your heart to face their heart. If you're talking to someone, you don't leave your arms crossed. You open your arms up. You open your body up, if you will, and you address them. You look them right in the eyes and you talk louder than you have to. Now, you would never yell like that. You got to hear what I'm saying. You're not yelling at them. You're just talking louder than you need to. There's a correlation that leaders are almost always loud talkers. Like leaders almost always talk loud. They're not yelling, but if you watch them, you'll usually pick them out in a room because you'll overhear them from down the hall. You'll overhear them from a different table. That doesn't mean that every leader looks like that. There's plenty of leaders who are amazing that are very quiet and a little demure. Like that happens too. But usually speaking, they're a little louder than they're a little bit more commanding, if you will. So what I want you to do is I want you to be polite and be clear. I want you to look somebody right in the eyes and I want you to talk clearly and I want you to say it nice and loud. You're not yelling, but you're not mumbling. Like, especially if you're 14, 16, 20, there's, especially today, right? Because so much happens over social media, so much happens online. We don't have as much human to human interaction. If you're the one person who's always like on it, like you look somebody right in the eye, like you go to shake, I don't know if anyone's going to shake any hands during COVID right now, but you get my point, right? Like you have like a nice firm handshake, you look them right in the eye, like you're clear. Trust me on this. Adults love this stuff. Like if you go to someone's house for dinner with your parents and you look the other parents right in the eye and you say, hi, thank you. Thanks for having us over. Dinner was amazing tonight. They're going to be like, what? Dude, that's the best mannered kid I've ever met. They're going to look at their kids and be like, how come you can't be like that? You shouldn't say that to people, but they're going to look at their kids and be like, how come do you get my point? You are going to stand out and you're going to stand out at work too. You're going to love it. All right. Number 11, stay late. I told you number 1 and number 11 on my list of 10 were the most vital. Stay late. You always go the extra mile. Like I did. I told you 10, but gave you 11. I told you 10 things, gave you 11. Number 11 is stay late. Here's what I mean. If your shift ends at 5 and you're walking out the front door at 5, you didn't stop at 5. You stopped at 4:50. You stopped at 4:55 to go clock out and get your jacket and grab your stuff out of the locker or whatever. You don't walk out the door at 5. You stay at your post until 5. And when you're done at 5, then if there's anything that needs to get done that wasn't done, you do it. Then you go take care of clocking out. By the way, some of the jobs you work, they're going to be like, nope, you got to clock out right at 5. So if that's the case, you go clock out right at 5. And if there's something that wasn't done at your stand or your station or whatever it is that you do for work, you go back on your own time for 2 or 3 minutes and you clean that up real fast. You put things back where they're supposed to be, but you don't leave early, man. You work. If you're paid till 5, you work till 5, then you leave. You don't walk out at 5. You walk out at 5:05. You walk out the front doors of that restaurant at 5:10 if you're off at 5. If you're walking out at 5, you quit 10 minutes early and you stole that 10 minutes from the business. Trust me. Your boss and your manager will feel that way, and they won't be wrong. They'll be right. And when you own a company someday, you're going to expect people to work until you're done paying them. And there's nothing wrong with that. You always give more than you're paid for. And if you'll always give more than you're paid for, you will eventually earn more than you need. Eventually, you won't be paid for what you do. You'll be paid for how you are. Let me say it again. Eventually, you won't be paid for what you do. You'll be paid for how or who you are. There might be a time in your life that you're paid to stack sandbags, and the number of sandbags you stack is how much money you're going to make. So what? There'll be a day that you're paid for what you know, and that's where you'll earn the most amount of money, but you have to be willing to do that work to get there. What you do here is what gets you there. All right, so that's the 11 things on the top 10. When you think about the job that you're going to take or the career path you're going to go in, remember, you're so young right now. Even if you're 20 or 25, you can't mess this thing up. You can't mess it up. If you'll use these top 11 things, it doesn't matter what job you go take. You're going to excel at it, and you're going to have an amazing reference from them. Speaking of references, they still matter. You leave a job better than you came in. You don't walk off of a job. You give 2 weeks notice. If your boss says, I don't need it, then you say, okay, that's fine. But you don't just quit. You never just quit and walk out. You always offer it. You're respectful. And you say, hey, I'd like to give 2 weeks notice. What would it look like for me to leave better than I found it? How do I leave the job and be on amazing terms that you might hire me back someday? Even if you think I ain't never working here again, that's okay. You ask the question and then you do it, but then you do a little bit more. You always leave with grace. You always leave with class. You always leave with respect. And I promise you, enough people will respect you back. There'll be somebody who takes advantage of you. Boo-hoo, so what? There'll be somebody who doesn't respect it. So what? You're not doing it for them. You're doing it for yourself. You're doing it so that you respect who you are. And when you respect who you are, other people will too. The people that matter ultimately will. All right, that is all the words I can say in 55 minutes without taking a breath as it relates to work and work ethic and a job or working in a career field. Go and find something you're interested in and go to work in it. And maybe you find out that you don't love it. That's okay. You'll punt and go do something else. But as long as you do these 11 things, you'll always move up. It doesn't matter if you're working in the career field you want to. As long as you're doing these 11 things, you're going to move up as a person. And then you'll eventually find yourself in the career field you want to be in. You don't have to have it all figured out. If you're 17 and you're like, Code, I don't know what to do with my life. Join the club. I know people that are 37 that don't know what to do with their life. So what? Go do something and do it with these 11 things. Then you'll figure it out. You don't need to have it all figured out. Here's a news flash. Your parents don't have it all figured out. I don't have it all figured out. Be okay. Go and work a job. Take a job, make great money, do these 11 things. You'll eventually be the boss. You'll eventually be the manager. That kid who's running from car to car pumping gas, that little dude is going to own a string of gas stations someday because he acts like it while he's just the employee. Hope you get my point from that. All right. I'd love to see you again next Thursday. We're going to talk about feeding the mind and feeding the body. We'll talk about the environment that you surround yourself with. We'll talk about the environment in your car, the environment in your bedroom at home, your environment of your locker or your desk at school, like the environment of your friendships. We're going to talk about what you feed your brain and what you feed your body. I hope that you've enjoyed this today. I know that I have. Thanks for being a part of this. This is one of the favorite parts of my week every week is talking with you guys. I wish I could see you in person, and this is the best we can do right now. So hope you enjoyed it. Have an amazing week. Do something to help someone. Just go help someone. Find somebody to make their day. You just become that person. Trust me, you're never going to regret it. Have an amazing day. Thanks for being here. Get registered for next week. Be same time, 5 o'clock Pacific. We'll see you there.